Wearing the glasses. Hey everybody, today I'm going to be talking about my board game gripes. Yes, controversial, hard to talk about. I'm someone who doesn't like to rock the boat, but this is a video that you might be able to relate to. One where there are certain things in the board gaming hobby that could be just a little bit better. It would just make the teach and getting into a game so much more smoother. So strap on your seatbelts everybody, because here we go. We are going to talk about things that really irritate me in board gaming. The first gripe that I want to talk about comes from a recent gaming experience, one that proved to be a little bit frustrating at the beginning, but once we got into the game, it was super fun. And I thought, wow, such a small thing that was overlooked by the people who published the game really may have impeded people's enjoyment of the game. The game I'm talking about is actually sitting on this shelf here. It's called Tribes of the Wind. And in Tribes of the Wind, basically each player has element cards, and the backs of the element cards you can kind of exploit when you're playing cards from your little area. And you're basically exploring different forest tiles, sending your wind people over to those forest tiles to build village and cause a little bit of pollution at the same time. But this game is scattered with iconography. There's like plus symbols, larger than symbols, less than symbols, forward slash, icons galore. In particular, the icons with the people, because depending on how many elements that your neighbor has compared to how many you have, and whether both neighbors have more or less than you, it's this whole mathematical equation of iconography that just really overwhelms you when you're trying to learn the game. But actually on your turn, all you're doing is playing a temple, playing a card, and that's it. If it was literally described like that to me, I'd be like, that's pretty easy. But scattered with all of these different icons on every card just made this game quite irritating to learn. And so my board game gripe with Tribes of the Wind is not with the actual game itself, because the game was actually really fun, but was the fact that this game did not include a player aid with all the icons explained on it. I had to actually go to Board Game Geek, find someone else's player aid, and have it on my phone in order to just get my head around what all these icons meant. Because most of the time in the game, you're looking at these icons going, what does that do? Hang on a minute. What does that icon do? What does that mean again? And you're spending all this time clarifying this, when because it's such a pivotal part of the game, they could have printed it onto 4 or 5 cards, and then there you go. What a much smoother experience and teaching experience this game could have been. One of the glorious things about board games is that when you open one for the first time, it's unraveling all of the cool contents inside. One of my biggest board game gripes is picking up a giant box like this beautiful one from Santa Monica, and then opening it up inside and realizing that when you take away the rulebook, look how much empty space is inside. You could fit an entire midweight euro in there. Like, seriously, look at all this space that's left over. And I've even got the long weekend expansion. And without the long weekend expansion in here, I honestly think this could have been literally a third of the size. It is a gripe because all of this space here potentially could have been space I could given to another game that's sitting on my shelf. At the moment, I've got some games sitting on the floor, sitting on tops of cupboards. I could have easily placed another game there. I guess one thing I could do is probably tuck in another game inside the box. But yeah, just because it's got a really big cover doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to have a lot of contents inside. In fact, I probably paid for a lot of oxygen in this box, or a lot of air. One of my favorite things about board games is showing pride in my game collection. When people come over, I'm really excited to take a game off the shelf and allow them to peruse and look at the game and feel excited about wanting to play it. And sometimes when I visit my friends' places who also have board game collections, I like to peruse their titles and be like, ooh, this is kind of cool. What is this game about? And so it kind of starts this really cool conversation of sharing each other's collections. One of my biggest gripes is when a game prints things on the side of the box that doesn't really showcase what the game is truly about. And in some ways, it kind of hinders the marketing value behind the game itself. Have a look at this game. This game is called Far Away. Now, it's a game which I tried to put on my shelf, but because it's one of those smaller games, I often slide games in like this into my shelf. Look what happens when I slide it in. If I slide it in, the title is upside down. This is the lid of the game. So am I expected to turn this game around, store it upside down so that this is the right way up? It kind of looks a little bit funny when the back of the box is on the top and the title of the box is face down. Not sure if that's a printing error, but the next game is one that is an absolute favorite of mine. I love their other games, but this game has such a beautiful box cover, and I think, wow, if you have a cover that looks like this, why not take it all the way around the sides of the box? Or at least to one of the edges of the box. But what you get on the edge of the box is a box of text. And then on the other side, you get another box of text in a lighter box. Am I supposed to just display this and see this box of text on the side? It kind of looks like the nutritional box on the side of a cereal box. Like, it's not going to really draw my attention in and want me to take it off the shelf to play. I mean, I always display it with this side because this is beautiful. It's also got this like deep side on it, but it's kind of a little bit dark for my liking. But this one is vibrant, inviting, really sells the theme of what this game looks like. It looks wonderful on my shelf on this side. But then when you turn it to this side, you're like, what is this? An essay? One of my next board game gripes is all about legibility of a game. It really irritates me when a game is so well produced, but then they pick a font that is so difficult to read. Now, I don't know about you, but when it's really hard to decipher rules and troll through rules and really just kind of understand how a game works, if there is a font there that is like really super cursive or done in a way where it's hard to differentiate the letters, it makes that process 10 times more difficult. And so this Reiner Knizia game, Sumatra, whilst it uses this very stylish font, it's very hard to distinguish what the letters are. And in the game, there are all these numbers that are really hard to see. Is that a 4 or is it a 9? There are like, that's like the crux or the like heart of the game. And if players can't even actually distinguish between a 4 and a 9 in a game, how are players going to ever enjoy the smoothness of the game? And games really work well when the flow and the teach and the visual accessibility of the game is easy to comprehend. No one wants to come home from a really long day of work, get out a game after dinner and be like, what font type is that? So Arial bold, Times New Roman, whatever is your pick, as long as we can read it. My next board game gripe is to do with the packaging, and it's when board game publishers, for some reason, decide to use metal tins as a way of containing their games. Metal tins are, I don't know, they're frustrating in order to store them somewhere securely where it can actually display the game. These two examples of using tins from Sushi Go and Sushi Go Party are prime examples of why I don't display these two games. First of all, Sushi Go, yes, it's protective. Literally, you could throw it into a river and it'll still survive. But when you place it vertically, the lid slides off because the weight of the cards inside push the lid open. And so I can't even store this vertically unless it's wedged against some other game. So I've got to store it like this, otherwise all the cards will randomly fall out. Then you've got Sushi Go Party, which is kind of like a modular version of Sushi Go. And inside Sushi Go Party, you have this kind of insert that sorts out all of the different groups of sushi cards and sets, and you can kind of mix and match what you like. But the problem with this particular box is as soon as I try to stand it vertically, everything starts wanting to slide out. And there is no place on my shelf where I can comfortably squeeze these games in without the lid just randomly flipping over and all the cards is falling onto the floor. And the last thing I want to do is turn around and be like, oh my goodness, why is half my sushi go set on the floor all mixed up? And then I have to spend all that time sorting it out. Whilst they do serve as really great protective measures for your game, and also really good storage containers for some of your condiments, they don't really work too well in helping to display the games and feeling compact, because even the shape of the tin itself just really, for some reason, just really don't like gaps around the corners and the edges, and it just, it's a board game great. Now, you might have noticed that my dining room is kind of like behind me. It's also my gaming table that I like to extend out. I'm actually sitting on my dining chair at the moment, but on the other side of this camera is actually my kitchen. And I have a kitchen drawer which is full of Ziploc bags, ones that games have come with and I haven't particularly used because, you know what? I really don't like the use of plastics. And I think there are much better solutions for storing all of these board game bits inside game boxes these days, that we really want to encourage publishers to use those environmentally friendly solutions, because our environment is precious to us, it's precious to me, and I want to make sure that when I bring a game to the table that it is environmentally sustainable. And so when I see just a bag or a roll of Ziploc bags just thrown into the box for you to sort out, I just think, is there a better way to do this? And some games have really achieved some great solutions. Zoo Tycoon, in fact, has all these tuck boxes to hold the hundreds of different animals in the game in the tuck boxes. So all you have to do when you play Zoo Tycoon is open the lid, and you can just pull out the animals and then close the lid at the end of the game. Beautiful! Leaf is another game that does that. I also want to showcase this game called Dabba Walla. Dabba Walla is like a polyomino stacking game where you're kind of like in Mumbai, India, and you're delivering different food to different customers. But what's cool about this storage solution is that the game board comes in puzzle pieces. So there's like pieces that stick out the side here. But those puzzle pieces on the side actually function as the lid of the storage boxes. So if I were to open this storage box, you'd be able to see that all the polyomino pieces are stored in a very organized way. Everything here is made from cardboard. Everything is printed onto the cardboard. The frame was very fun to put together, but at the end of the day, when I'm finished with the game, I slide the lid back on, which is a part of the game board, and then everything fits really nicely into this game box, which really has everything that you need. Look at that. Doesn't that bring a tear to my eye? Has a little storage box which you open the lid. These join into the edge of the game board. It even has rule and game reminders on the lid of the box. But then when you open it, just seeing like how everything is organized in such a thoughtful and really logical way. Look at the color coding of those polyomino tiles, and you know, part of the scoreboards on the back of the lid, and just closing it and just placing it all back in the box. There's no need to like unpack. It reduces setup time. It's environmentally friendly, and oh my goodness, more game publishers should really do it that way. My next board game gripe is one that I don't know if there's a real solution to, because each game is unique, and when you're teaching or explaining a game through a rule book or a video, there's certain approaches that work best for some games and not so much for others. So for example, if it's a dexterity game, it's easy just to demonstrate how it works. If it's a really difficult Euro, you might break down the board into different regions and explain how different region works before connecting it all together. There might be a central interlocking mechanism that combines and connects everything together that you might start with, but at the end of the day, different games have different ways that need to, or different approaches that help people to understand how to play it. But one thing that I find incredibly frustrating is when a game uses all of this meta language that the person who's picking up the game for the first time has no understanding of. So one rulebook that I really struggled with was from the game Batoku. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Studio Ghibli and I love the inspiration that the Studio Ghibli universe has had on the designer of this game, but the way this rulebook is written is a little bit mind-boggling. Yes, there's a lot of flavor text. Yes, there's a lot of symbology. Yes, there's some diagrams, but they use words that I'm like, what is that? So there's Botoku cards, there's the spirit token, there's the Hikaru hill. There are all of these different languages or language choices that I'm just like, what is that? What's the difference between the forest and the Hikaru hill? What is a yokai card and a pilgrim? I just basically would love to see if games can just use the most basic language as humanly possible. Move the red cube over there. When the red cube goes there, get $2. I don't want to hear this flowery text of like, move the fancy little idol into that position, then gain 2 magical tokens from the land of Mystica. Yes, I get the theme is important, but I prefer my themes to be in the game mechanism and in the gameplay itself. All I need to know when I'm learning in the game is what do I do, how do I get the bonuses, and what the bonuses connect to. If I can just get that little pattern of connection, then I'm a happy person because I've learned how to play. I do like how rulebooks tend to separate the flavor text from the rule instructions, which I think is really, really good. But then when they start using like put the pilgrim and put the Iwakura rock in this spot, I'm just like, what's the pilgrim again? What is the Iwakura? Which one is which? How does that go? Where does the dice fit on my board? Which color dice? What are the pip values? What do these symbols all mean? It all becomes like an overwhelming flood of information that makes it harder for me to just get into and enjoy the game. And Botoku is actually one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. And now that I've gone through and committed like 1 or 2 days to go through the rules, and I also learned how to play the solo mode, and don't get me started on the solo mode for this game. Now it's like, it's so enjoyable. I love it. It's not that tricky to understand. All right, my next board game gripe requires you to enter the board game zone. There's my little shrimp tank, and I've also got like a whole other like shelf over there. So my next board game gripe is all down to box sizes, and you can see how I've kind of Tetrised this entire shelf. I've tried to squeeze and fit and place all the boxes in so that they have a particular order. Yes, there's a particular arrangement. I've got the 2-player games at the top, kind of the codename size boxes here, and then the big tall boxes, squeezing a bit of Vladimir Suki on the side here. But yeah, the size of board game boxes, I would feel it would be better if they're a little bit more consistent, kind of like shoe sizes. This is size 7 shoe size, this is a size 3 shoe size, this is a size 10 shoe size. And then, I don't know, it would make actually arranging and stacking the games so much more pleasant, so much more visually aesthetic, and oh my goodness, when I find a series of 5 games that are all exactly the same size, I think this is my favorite part of the shelf, is Sagrada, why are you so tall? But basically, this particular shelf is my favorite because it all just lines up so neatly. It's immensely satisfying. Now, I'm a person who likes to read things in sequential steps and sequential order. So my next board game gripe is probably a little bit more personal, and I think different people who read prefer things structured in a different way, but I like to I prefer things that make sense in order. I don't like rule explanations where they jump around to the end of the game, then jump to the beginning, and then into the middle. It all becomes a mess. And so when rulebooks kind of structure their layout like it's all jumbled up or partitioned in all these weird ways, it does really confuse me. And it could be just a personal thing, but games like Spirit Island, at the front of the book, it says how to read this book. This rulebook is divided into 3 main sections: game setup, sequence of play, and game concepts. Read the game setup first. Tick, excellent, makes sense. Then read the sequence of play next. Okay, yeah, I know the steps, but then now search through the whole back of the book for all the game concepts. Why? Why do this to me? Basically, as you explain the steps, say this is what the concept is. And that way I'm like, okay, when the invader phase is happening, this is the concept. The concepts mean that you actually have to keep flicking back and forward to look at the examples. What was the step in the game, and then what was the phase, and then what was the concept, which phase does, the energy and card play go to, the boards and the lands, what? And then like invaders, does that go with the invader phase, which part of the blight happens, and then when does the power trigger? Oh my god, it's just like, it actually makes it more confusing, more difficult to navigate, and the fact that I'm flicking back and forward, and if you look carefully, don't ever do this, but I've actually highlighted certain phrases where I've played like 3 or 4 games of Spirit Island. I'm like, this game is so easy. How is everyone not winning this game? And then I'm like, oh, I made like 5 rules errors simply because the information wasn't in the section that it should have been in when I was trying to learn the game from reading the book from front to end. It's just, imagine like reading a story and they've taken like parts of the story and just thrown it at the end of the book, and you're like, okay, well, why did that character do that? Oh, I need to flick, 50 pages ahead to find where it happened. I love Spirit Island. And don't get me wrong, it is a brilliant game, but learning it really just it caused me to make a lot of rules mistakes, which could have been overcome if it was just sequenced a little bit more intuitively. It is also another game that suffers without a player aid. Like, please, everybody, put a player aid in your game. It really makes that stepping stone into the game so much more smoother. When Dinosaur World first came out, I was super excited because it was like Jurassic Park. You get to build dinosaur enclosures, look after your dinosaurs, genetically kind of create them, as well as take your guests on Jeep rides throughout your park. Fun, 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 fun. Love it, love it, love it, love it. However, there was one gripe that I had with the production of this game. In this game, when you visit tiles, you add boredom tokens. The boredom tokens are this tiny. They're like the size of like maybe a 1/5 of my fingernail. These things are the most fiddly things I've ever seen, because every time you touch them, it flicks, and every time you touch it, it sticks to things. It's basically like the smallest token I've ever seen in a board game. And I don't know about you, my fingers aren't really that big. They're actually not that big. So I can pretty much pick things up without using a set of tweezers. But wow, if you're gonna make tokens, please make them big or have a different way to track them. And I know in this game, I've now resorted to using dice just because they're easy to track, less fiddly, and more visually appealing on the table. So I kind of found my own solution for that problem. My next board game gripe is to do with different colors and being able to differentiate between similar colored things. Now, in that example earlier where I had a game of Batoku, everything in that game is green. Like green to every single inch of that board. Maybe there's like dashes of purple and magenta here and there, but essentially it's 98% green. So why on earth would you use one of the player colors as green and brown? Like, are you kidding me? This whole board is green, and so why on earth would I pick the player color green to go onto the green background where the board already looks so busy the way it does? Why would I pick brown on a game which is all about going to a forest? Everything is already brown. It's like, please pick colors that make your game stand out, or conversely, mute some of the background colors so the player pieces do lift a little. It makes it visually easier to see all the places on the board, all the regions of the board, all of the actions, all of the icons that already my brain has to process without all the extra artistic confusion. And it also applies to things like where You've got meeples of all different colors, and the red meeple is very similar in color to the orange meeple and similar in color to the pink meeple. If you're going to use cubes in your game, please make sure that the color of the cubes stand out, they're distinguishable from each other, and they're clear and easy to see and really pop off the board. Because one thing that can really, makes me really upset sometimes is like losing track of where I am, and that can be really frustrating, especially when the game is so good and so enjoyable. That small things like that really do make a difference. My Bitoku game now has little stickers, so a friend bought me a set of stickers which I've attached to all of my player pieces, so now they definitely stand out. But without those stickers, it's basically green on green on green. I do have to pick this game back off the shelf again because I have another gripe with Tribes of the Wind, and this game is not alone in doing this next gripe that I have. And if you turn the box to the side where it says how many players, what the age is for, and what the playtime for is, I've rarely found a game that has matched that playtime. This playtime says 20 minutes per player. It took me probably 45 minutes to learn the game. Then another 20 minutes just to decipher the iconography. I do find that whenever I look at the playtime on the side of a box, I do take it with a grain of salt. In fact, take the playtime and add 60 minutes to it. That's probably a more accurate representation of how much time per player you're probably going to spend on the game. So if it says 20 minutes per player, it's probably going to be, 60 minutes per player or 80 minutes per player. That's more accurate. And sometimes I wonder why they even put the playtime there anymore, because most of the time it doesn't really match up with the real amount of time required to set up, learn the rules, play the game, and then do all the scoring at the end. Maybe there should be like a 5-step breakdown. Setting up, 3 hours. Learning to play, 2 days. Playing the game, 5 minutes. Packing it away and never playing it again, 3 minutes. So, what are some of your board game gripes? Please feel free to list as many board game gripes as you like in the comment section below, because sometimes when we just air some of these things out, we can kind of be like, oh my goodness, I never thought of that. Oh my goodness, this is such an important thing that a lot of people are struggling with. And it's when we kind of share our struggles and share our experiences and our stories that we truly grow from this experience. And hopefully we all have less board game gripes. But basically, if you really enjoyed the value-added content of my video, please consider liking, subscribing, and watching my other videos on my channel. Would truly appreciate it. If you really want to see this board game channel grow, please head over to my Patreon page and support me there for exclusive Patreon-only videos. Otherwise, this is Danny signing out. I hope your next board game experience is a really smooth one now that we got the gripes out of the way.